Ever feel like what we don't know about COVID is scarier than what we do?
Oh, absolutely. Especially so early on.
Right. Well, today's deep dive is going to make you think twice about this virus.
Right.
We're looking at autopsy findings that kind of shook things up.
Yeah, autopsies, they're not the cheeriest topic.
Definitely not a light dinner conversation.
But man, they are crucial for understanding how diseases really work, what's going on beneath the surface.
Totally. And this study we're diving into was published back in 2020 in the journal Histopathology. 21 COVID patients from Switzerland.
21 might not sound like a lot,
Right.
but for an autopsy study, that's actually pretty decent, especially back then when everything was so new and, frankly, terrifying.
Yeah, we were all kind of flying blind back then. So these researchers, they were on a mission, right, to figure out what COVID does to the body beyond just like the lungs.
Because, we knew the lungs were getting hit hard.
Ground zero, right.
Exactly. But what about everything else? What other secrets was this virus hiding?
And spoiler alert, they found some pretty wild stuff.
Okay.
So, lungs. Had to start there. It's the obvious place, right? What did they find?
Well, not surprisingly, there was a lot of pneumonia, tons of inflammation.
Makes sense. Lungs working overtime, struggling to keep up.
Exactly. But here's the thing. They also found these tiny blood clots.
Microthrombi, they're called.
Microthrombi. Yeah, basically little clots in the small blood vessels of the lungs.
Okay, so that's not good.
Not at all. And while some clotting can happen with severe pneumonia, in general, the researchers, they thought these microthrombi, they might be a direct result of the virus itself. Like COVID was directly causing these clots.
So it's like a double whammy then, right? You've got the lungs inflamed, struggling to breathe, and on top of that, their blood supply is getting choked off by these tiny clots.
Yeah, it's like the virus was going for the jugular, so to speak.
Wow. This is already more intense than I thought it would be. Okay, so we've got messed up lungs, blood clots. What else? Don't tell me it stops there.
Oh, it doesn't stop there. This is where things get really interesting, I think, at least from a cardiology standpoint. They found something pretty shocking related to the heart.
Okay, lay it on me. What'd they find?
Over 25% of the patients had signs of something called ATTR amyloidosis.
ATTR amyloidosis.
Yeah, ATTR amyloidosis.
Yeah, ATTR amyloidosis.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to need a little help with that one. What is ATTR amyloidosis?
So it's a type of heart disease, right? And basically what happens is you get these abnormal proteins building up in the heart muscle.
Okay.
And that makes it much harder for the heart to pump blood effectively.
So it's like trying to run a marathon with like a backpack full of rocks.
Exactly. It just makes everything so much harder for the heart. And to find this in over 25% of these COVID patients, that's huge. Way higher than you'd expect to see in a random group of people.
Wow, that's a pretty big red flag, right? So does this mean COVID is directly causing this heart condition?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The researchers, they didn't have a definitive answer, but it's definitely a question that stopped them in their tracks.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it seems like a pretty big deal.
Oh, it's a big deal for sure. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started.
Okay, so we've got the lungs, we've got blood clots, we've got this potential heart issue. Anything else? What about the other organs?
Oh, yeah. We can't forget about the kidneys.
The kidneys, right, because those are often affected in severe COVID cases too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. The kidneys are like the body's filtration system, right?
Yeah.
They're working constantly to filter out waste products from the blood. And when you get a severe illness like COVID, man, it can really put a strain on them.
So are you saying COVID is directly attacking the kidneys too?
That's what it looks like. The researchers, they found damage to those tiny blood vessels in the kidneys, the capillaries. Remember those from high school biology? They're responsible for filtering the blood. And they even found these virus-like particles in the kidneys. So it seems like the virus could be directly infecting and attacking the kidneys as well.
Oh, wow. So not only are the lungs messed up, there might be heart problems, and now the kidneys are under attack too.
Yeah.
This virus is like multi-pronged.
It really is. It's not just messing with your respiratory system. It's like this whole body assault.
Okay, so we've got lungs, we've got blood clots, a potential heart condition, kidneys being attacked. Is there a connection here? Like, what's the common denominator with all of this damage?
Right. It's like, how does this virus wreak havoc on so many different systems?
Well, here's where things get really interesting. What if, and this is a big what if, but what if COVID-19 isn't just a respiratory disease?
No.
What if it's actually primarily a vascular disease?
Vascular meaning? Meaning it's attacking the circulatory system, the blood vessels. Think of it this way. Your blood vessels, They're like a highway system, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they're transporting oxygen and nutrients to every single part of your body. Now imagine COVID-19 as like a massive traffic jam on that highway. It's causing blockages, it's causing damage, and that damage can have a ripple effect throughout the entire body.
Okay, that is a terrifying but very effective analogy. So you're saying that the virus is basically attacking the lining of the blood vessels, and that's how it's causing damage to all these different organs.
That's the theory. It's like the virus is disrupting the delicate balance inside our blood vessels, and that's setting off this chain reaction of inflammation and damage that can affect, the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, you name it.
Wow, so it's like a domino effect. One system falls and then another and another.
Exactly. And it just goes to show, how interconnected our bodies really are.
Right. You never really think about it until something like this happens.
And one more thing about this study. There was something else that kind of threw the researchers for a loop.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, they noticed that their study group had a higher proportion of patients with blood type A compared to the general population.
Wait, blood type. What does that have to do with anything?
That's what they thought too. But there's a growing body of evidence that suggests blood type might play a role in how susceptible people are to certain infections, including things like COVID.
So are you saying that people with certain blood types might be more likely to have severe complications from COVID-19?
It's a possibility, and it's something that researchers are looking into. Now, of course, this study, it doesn't mean that having type A blood means you're doomed if you get COVID.
Right.
But it does suggest that there might be a link there, something else we need to understand.
Wow. This just keeps getting more and more interesting. So we've got the lungs, the blood clots, the heart, the kidneys, blood type.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else this study tells us about COVID-19? It makes you wonder, right? Even if you don't die from COVID, what's it doing to your body in the long run?
That's the big question, isn't it? And this study, as scary as it is, it was done on patients who unfortunately didn't make it.
Right.
But it makes you think, what about the folks dealing with long COVID? Could this kind of vascular damage be part of what's going on with them?
It's like we keep hearing about the long-term effects, the fatigue, the brain fog, the heart issues. Yeah. It's got to be connected somehow, right?
Exactly. This study was like an early warning sign that this virus, it can have some serious long-term consequences. And we need to figure out how to treat those, how to prevent them if we can.
Absolutely. We can't just brush it under the rug and be like, oh, well, that's long COVID.
Right.
We need to understand what's happening in the body and how to help people who are suffering.
100%. Now, it's important to mention this study, it did have some limitations, right? It was a relatively small group of patients.
Right.
And they were all from the same area, Switzerland. So we have to be careful about applying the findings too broadly.
It's a good point. We need more research, right?
Yeah.
Larger studies, different populations to really confirm all of this.
Absolutely. This study, it's like a piece of the puzzle, a really important piece, but we need more pieces to see the whole picture.
But even with those limitations, I mean, this study was kind of groundbreaking, wasn't it? It really shifted our understanding of COVID-19.
Oh, totally. It basically turned everything we thought we knew on its head.
Right. It's not just a respiratory disease, it's a vascular disease, too.
Exactly.
And that has implications for, well, everything.
No doubt about it. And it really highlights just how important research is, especially when it comes to a new and complex virus like this.
Absolutely. Well, I think this has definitely given us a lot to think about. And for our listeners, if you take away one thing from today's deep dive, let it be this. COVID-19 is way more complicated than we first thought. This study, even with its limitations, it really shows us just how much more there is to learn about this virus and how it affects the body, especially in the long term. Who knows what other secrets this virus is hiding?
Right. And that's what makes science so fascinating, isn't it? Always more to discover.
Always digging deeper. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.